There's an old adage in screenwriting, write what you know, which is why I think over a long enough timeline, every filmmaker will eventually make a movie about making a movie. Hi, my name is Tim, and I write for television. These are some of my thoughts. I have a problem with the movie La La Land. I have a lot of problems with the movie La La Land, but mainly my problem with the movie is what it has to say about art. Let me explain. In La La Land, Ryan Gosling's character, Seb Walker, gets a job as a touring musician who plays with John Legend. But he does not like playing pop music. He wants to give it up and make jazz. This is the character's main conflict, whether to continue the stable work of being a touring musician or to pursue his dream of opening a club and playing jazz. Now, this is an utterly insane conflict for a movie. For one, making a living as a musician is extremely hard. Being able to afford living in Los Angeles off of money you make from doing art is like winning the lottery. The idea that I'm supposed to get invested in whether or not a man wants to keep a job that thousands would kill for is the kind of conflict that could only be relatable to someone who's already in a position of extreme privilege. My other problem with this movie is that to get anyone invested in this banal conflict, the movie goes out of its way to portray jazz as more valuable than the pop music he's playing on tour. This, I find, deeply elitist. Music is subjective. If a song brings you joy, then it's a good song. Jazz is no better than pop. It's more complicated, it's harder to play, but it's not a more noble calling than any other kind of music. Eventually, Seb gets his happy ending. He opens a jazz bar, and while he doesn't get the girl, it's portrayed as sort of a bittersweet victory. All of this feeds into La La Land's central message, that there's something important about making art. That it is in fact the most important thing you could do, more important than your security, your happiness, or your relationships. I disagree. I have spent most of my adult life working in film and television, but I don't think it's the most important thing in life. My art is less important than my family, my friends, my community. But what I find so fascinating about La La Land is it's not Damien Chazelle's first film about the value of art. Before making La La Land, he made Whiplash, a movie with a nearly opposite point of view. Whiplash tells the story of a young jazz drummer named Andrew, who is essentially in an abusive relationship with his school's jazz conductor, Fletcher. Fletcher insists that this abuse will make Andrew a better artist, and Andrew believes him. Andrew alienates all of his friends and family, all for the sake of art. And while Andrew eventually makes something of this abusive relationship, Fletcher is always portrayed as a petty, mean villain. Whiplash makes its point pretty plainly. There is nothing noble about pursuing art at the expense of everything else. The film is in total disagreement with La La Land. And what's so funny to me is that both movies include a scene in which their main character talks at a woman about jazz.
And it's dying. It's dying, man. It's dying on the vine. And the world says, let it die. It had its time. Well, not on my watch.
So how does this happen? How does an artist make a movie criticizing the obsessive pursuit of art at the expense of everything else, and then another movie glorifying it? I think it has something to do with Insecurity. Whiplash was Chazelle's breakout film. After making it, he became one of the hottest new directors in Hollywood. Suddenly, he was showered with praise, and there was a bidding war for his talents. A strange thing happens when artists suddenly step into fame and fortune. They sometimes ask themselves, do I deserve this? I mean, I'm talented, but I'm not saving lives. I'm not feeding the homeless. Do I deserve all this money and recognition? This is something that artists really do think about. We have this insecurity about the value of what we do. This is why so many male action stars insist on doing their own stunts. We don't want to be seen as effeminate pretty boys, but as real men who really do jump out of windows. And it's why we make movies about the value of art. Because one way to cope with this insecurity of sudden success is to convince yourself that you're doing something really important. In fact, what you're doing is the most important thing a person can do. And it makes sense that you are so rich. It's the same narrative that the wealthy elite have been pushing for centuries, that their success is because of their hard work and value to society, and not because of good luck or the status they were born into. Chazelle isn't the first artist to demonstrate this sophomoric insecurity. Michel Hazanavicius started his career making the OSS 117 movies, which were very silly Bond parodies. They're totally worth a watch if you haven't seen them. Of course, once he got successful, the Insecurity hit, and he made The Artist, a film about the grand power of the movies made in the style of a silent-era melodrama. The Artist circles similar themes to La La Land, the value of art and being authentic, with more of a focus on the need for success and recognition. Like La La Land, it is almost impossible to relate to these conflicts because they are the tribulations of privileged people. Michel Gondry stumbled into this theme with the more local, community-minded framing, with Be Kind, Rewind, without the focus on successful people. Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg took decades before finally succumbing to the disease with Hugo and The Fabelmans. Birdman is the trifecta of insecurity, a film about the value of art, a gimmicky one-take, and a screed against media critics who have the audacity to give his movies poor reviews.
There's nothing in here about structure, nothing here about intention. It's just a bunch of crappy opinions backed up by even crappier comparisons.
While all of these movies vary wildly in tone and quality, they all rest their stories firmly on the power of true art. They are an act of myth-making, an attempt at creating a pantheon that the filmmakers just so happen to be a member of. Not all movies are so self-aggrandizing. Charlie Kaufman, riding high on the improbable success of Being John Malkovich, made Adaptation, a movie that fully leans into his insecurity. Here, Kaufman writes himself into the film. He is portrayed as a nervous, sweaty mess who wants to make a simple movie about flowers, but is too insecure and self-absorbed to do it without writing himself into the film. It is a movie that has no interest in the value of art. It doesn't convey what he does as important. In fact, just the opposite. It portrays the artistic process as an act of madness and ridicules anyone who takes it too seriously. The most recent iteration of A Star is Born has a very interesting take on the value of art. Even though it's Bradley Cooper's first film, the movie is made from the vantage point of a man who has been famous and successful for a decade. And it conveys Bradley's insecurity as something deeply destructive. Once again, we have a movie about a man who has already attained unbelievable fame and fortune, but unlike in The Artist, Jackson Gaines is not tortured by concerns of recognition. He's tortured by alcoholism. In one scene, the doomed rock star winces at his girl's pop ode to men in tight jeans, a song that I unironically love. He whines about how her new songs lack the raw authenticity of her breakout hit. This scene runs the risk of turning into a speech about the importance of authentic, meaningful art, but the movie doesn't really take Jackson's side. This isn't a movie about Ali's music, it's about how Jackson's alcoholism affects his relationships.
That'll give you the answer.
I don't know, maybe I just fucking failed you. It just
You
kills
what?
me. I'm sorry.
You failed me?
Yeah, you're embarrassing, and it's just, I feel
I'm
bad for you.
embarrassing?
Yeah, I just,
I'm not fucking embarrassing.
I just have to tell
You're
you, I gotta
embarrassing.
be
And you know what
honest
you're
with you,
doing
you know,
is you're so embarrassed of
I
your
just
fucking
gotta
self
know.
that you gotta put me down.
It's about a man who is sliding towards the grave, unable to accept the world as it is. His need for something more profound dooms him. One of my favorite movies about art is The Banshees of Inisherin. This film is set in a small island community in Ireland, where a man named Colm is going through a midlife crisis. He decides he wants to devote his life to making music. He no longer has time for his dim-witted friend Patrick, and he tells him that their friendship is over.
I just don't like you no more.
Patrick doesn't understand why someone would just abandon a relationship after decades, so he refuses to stop being Colm's friend. The film then tells the story of each man's escalating attempt to either come together or break apart. Colm's desire to devote himself to art is not portrayed as noble or beautiful. It is a deeply selfish choice that alienates everyone in his life. And the music that Colm makes is not portrayed as transcendent or beautiful. It's just music. It doesn't matter. It's not what the movie's about. All the movie is concerned with is the things Colm is destroying: his friends, his body, his community. There is no song that is good enough to be worth all this carnage. The Banshees of Inisherin is made by Martin McDonagh, who's had a long career as a successful writer and director. But unlike Chazelle, McDonagh is uninterested in trying to justify his success. He is not trying to glorify what he has decided to devote his life to. It's fun for a while, and it sometimes pays the bills, but it's your friends and your community that matter the most. Here's the thing. I think that the media we make matters. Movies and television do have the power to influence culture, and I think it's important that artists be aware of the power that they wield. I've already made a video about how I think it is our duty as artists to tell the truth. But the thing is, media only has an effect on culture in the aggregate. If you see the same message over and over and over, that message will eventually start to seep in. But no one movie is going to change the world. No one song is going to make COVID any more manageable. So why does this matter? It's because the people who work in film and television are not struggling with balancing authenticity and success. We are struggling to pay our bills. We are struggling with our relationships. We are struggling with our health. We are struggling with looming ecological disaster. We are not working in entertainment because it's some divinely important calling. We're working in entertainment because we're good at it and it pays the rent. And yet, that's not how we portray ourselves. We portray ourselves as selfish dreamers obsessed with status and personal ambition, weeping our way to unbelievable wealth and fame. And then we wonder why the rest of America has such a negative view of Hollywood. Do me a favor. If you can think of any movies that you love or hate about art, please put them in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week.